If defending someone you admired cost you everything, how would you respond? A small-town waitress receives severe criticism and perhaps loses her job after standing up for Elon Musk in a packed cafe. However, her life takes an unthinkable turn the following day. Stay tuned to learn how one brave deed transformed everything. Zuri, a 30-year-old server at Sweet Maples Cafe, a little quaint place tucked away in a quiet area of town, had always enjoyed her night shift. The majority of the customers were regulars, senior residents who came in to catch up and drink coffee while remembering the good old days. Zuri found it to be a tranquil haven, a leisurely setting with few surprises. However, that recognizable rhythm was disrupted tonight. The bell above the door chimed just before closing time, and someone Zuri never thought she would see in a place like Sweet Maples entered. Her eyes widened as she recognized him, and she froze for a second. One of the most talked about people in the world, Elon Musk, entered the cafe as if he were a regular customer. Even the regulars looked over their shoulders, some of them muttering to each other, his presence commanding attention. Zuri's heart pounded. She had seen Elon on TV, in interviews, and on social media many times. But now here he was, a little worn out, but still exuding confidence. He sat down at a little booth by the window and stared out, lost in thought. Zuri calmed herself, inhaled deeply, and walked over to his table. "Hi there, what can I get for you tonight?" she said with her kindest smile. He uttered, "Just a coffee, please. Black and maybe a slice of whatever pie you have." Zuri said, "Coming right up," in an attempt to be informal. Sensing that other customers were watching her, she walked back to the counter. Zuri couldn't quite figure out why, but some of the regulars were already mumbling, and some of them were a little annoyed. She told herself that he was only a client as she poured his coffee and plated a piece of apple pie. Even if he was, well, Elon Musk, she wanted to treat him with the same warmth and consideration that she offered to everyone else. She went back to his table and took his order. After saying thank you, he took a sip and looked out the window once more. He appeared distracted, possibly reflecting on a previous encounter. Zuri assumed he had had a difficult day, and she felt a little sorry for him. Everyone needed a place to relax, big shot or not. Zuri returned to working behind the store, keeping herself occupied and occasionally looking at Elon. She was intrigued and impressed at the same time. Although he was a driven individual who constantly aimed for the stars, it appeared that not everyone in the cafe agreed with her. One of the older men, Sam, a regular who was renowned for his unvarnished views, finally got up and approached Elon's table. Uncertain of what he was about to say, Zuri watched anxiously. Sam remarked, "Excuse me," in a rough yet loud enough voice to get everyone's attention. "You're the one who once backed OpenAI, right? Did you assist in setting it up?" Elon paused mid-sentence and looked up. Calmly, "Yes, I was involved in the early days," he said. With a doubtful expression on his face, Sam folded his arms. "So why are you now against them?" "I've heard that you're creating your own AI product that is similar to theirs. That seems a little contradictory, doesn't it?" Elon put down his coffee cup and moaned. "I'm worried about the path OpenAI is taking. AI should, in my opinion, be impartial and truth-based rather than skewed by ulterior intentions. I started XAI for that reason. I wanted to create something more fact-based and truthful." "Sure," sneered Sam. "You're only thinking about yourself. What, you're creating your own AI since you didn't obtain the control you desired? More wealth, more influence? Isn't that it?" From the other tables, a few murmurs of agreement emerged. Zuri noted a small stiffness in Elon's stance, but his countenance remained unchanged. She had never seen that side of him before. He was vulnerable. She reasoned that he was accustomed to criticism and perhaps even anticipated it. However, hearing it in this tiny private setting seemed to have a different effect. Musk said, "Actually, no. It's not about power or profit," in a calm voice. "It has to do with responsibility. One of our most potent tools is artificial intelligence. I don't want to look back and realize that I could have done more to control it." Zuri observed the conversation with a twinge of discomfort. Serving someone as well-known as Elon had delighted her, while the others appeared to be practically antagonistic. A few people shook their heads and whispered, obviously not believing him because they thought his acts were self-serving. Zuri stood behind the counter, listening with a troubled heart as individuals became more and more hostile in their criticism of Elon Musk. She didn't like the charges made against him or the way people looked at him. She had viewed Elon as a representation of advancement, someone who actively sought to bring about change rather than only discussing it. He was controversial, to be sure, but who wasn't a visionary? At last, she was unable to contain herself. She approached Sam's table and cleared her throat before speaking, her nerves rattling, but her voice firm. Zuri looked about at the regulars who were now closely observing her. Look, I know not everyone agrees with what he's doing, but you can't just dismiss him as selfish, she continued. This man has a foundation that helps hospitals and sick children in addition to his investments in technology and space. I've read about it. Regarding AI, well, whether we like it or not, technology is always evolving. Don't you think it's worthwhile that he's attempting to make things safer and more transparent? Elon appeared to pay attention to what she was saying. His eyes were full of astonishment and maybe even gratitude as he gazed at her. He hadn't expected anyone to defend him, she thought, least of all a waitress in a little diner like this. Zuri pressed on, gathering speed. He is not solely motivated by financial gain just because he is attempting to enhance an existing product. After all, isn't that the essence of innovation? Looking for methods to improve the situation? There was a brief silence in the room. While others continued to display skepticism, others appeared surprised. Zuri had spent years with these people, listening to their stories, laughing at their jokes, and serving them coffee and pie. However, she seemed to be an outsider tonight. Then Mr. Adam, her supervisor, entered from the rear and scowled at what he was witnessing. His gaze became more serious as he turned his attention from Zuri to the other patrons. With a clipped tone, he said, "Zuri, what's going on here?" She swallowed hard and paused. She continued, "I was just defending Mr. Musk," in a tone that was softer now but still little defiant. Mr. Adams scowled more deeply. He shook his head, looking around at the regulars, some of whom were nodding disapprovingly. "Zuri, thank you for your enthusiasm, but the core of this place is our regulars. We cannot allow you to argue with them over any consumer, whether or not they are famous." "But I wasn't arguing, Mr. Adam. I was just—" He interrupted her by raising a hand. "I've decided on something. We should find someone else to replace you, in my opinion. You can remain here for a few more days until I find someone else to replace you. But then—" Zuri's heart fell. The cafe had served as her haven, a small haven where she was familiar with the routine and daily routine. She didn't anticipate losing her job as a result of this. A few patrons laughed around her, obviously enjoying the drama that was developing. Despite herself, she felt a twinge of embarrassment as her eyes began to tear up. The worst conceivable outcome resulted from her attempt to defend someone she believed should have a fair chance. She would now have to endure awkward looks, whispers, and the sting of rejection for the rest of her time at the cafe. Elon, who had been silently listening, got to his feet. He sensed the difficulties his presence had caused and glanced at Zuri with a mixture of appreciation and sadness. He said, "Thank you for defending me, Zuri," in a soft voice. "However, I don't want to be the cause of your dismissal. I'm going to leave now." Zuri blinked back tears as she glanced up at him. She was thankful that he understood, even if she was at a loss for words. As he turned to go, she nodded slightly, her heart hurting. The cafe door closed behind Musk as he left, the bell above it chiming again. The ensuing stillness was deafening, and Zuri could feel every pair of eyes on her, their contempt weighing heavily on her shoulders. When she aided Elon Musk, this black waitress lost her job. However, she had the shock of her life the following day. Zuri's heart wasn't in it when she showed up for work the following day. Her eyes were tired from a restless night, and she entered Sweet Maple's cafe feeling discouraged. She was troubled by the idea of needing to find a new work, but she was much more afraid of the snide glances she would receive from the regulars. She was still thinking about what had happened yesterday. It felt unjust to be dismissed for defending someone she respected. Yet here she was, attempting to scrape by each day. The doorbell rang just as the lunch rush was beginning to subside. Zuri hardly looked up from the coffee maker when she heard whispers of excitement. When she turned and saw Elon Musk standing in the doorway with a faint smile on his face, her stomach twisted over. He looked around the room, nodded slightly to the interested observers, and then sat down at the same table near the window that he had been using the night before. With everyone watching, the cafe fell silent. The proprietor of the cafe, Mr. Adam, was also present, looming anxiously near the counter. Elon was obviously wondering why he was back in their small cafe, as some of the regulars from the night before looked between Elon and Zuri with thinly veiled curiosity. Zuri handed over his coffee and a piece of apple pie, but her fingers trembled a little as she struggled to remain calm. As she put the things down, she forced a courteous smile, but didn't stay. She didn't want to cause any more commotion, but she wasn't sure why he was back. Half expecting him to depart as gently as he had the previous evening, she busied herself with other tables. However, Elon remained, sipping his coffee and looking at her every now and again. It seemed like forever before he looked up and saw her, motioning for her to bring him the bill. Zuri walked over to his table, took a deep breath, and grabbed the card machine. She slid his card into the machine as she got to him, forcing herself to grin professionally. She responded softly, "Thanks for coming in again," still feeling self-conscious about yesterday. She sensed that everyone was watching her closely, obviously interested in what would happen next. Elon's face softened as he looked into her eyes. "Zuri, I just wanted to say thank you for standing up for me last night," he stated in a quiet but earnest tone. "I know it cost you, and not everyone would have done that." A faint smile began to appear on Zuri's face as she gazed down. "I just said what I believed," she added, maintaining a steady tone. "I don't think anyone deserves to be judged by one side of the story." After giving a contemplative nod, Elon leaned forward and looked around to make sure he had her entire attention. "You know, I was thinking about what you did after I left here last night. I checked in with my staff, and they said that we would be thrilled to have someone on board that has your honesty and heart." Zuri's hands froze on the card machine as her gut twisted in shock. She asked, not believing what she was hearing, "What do you mean?" Elon smiled encouragingly at her. "People that truly care and get along with others are constantly needed by our charity. We need someone like you at the phone center, if you're interested. Although it wouldn't be glamorous, the work would be consistent, and who knows, it could even be the beginning of something more significant." Zuri blinked, finding it difficult to comprehend what he had spoken. When she understood that he was giving her a job, a real career, one that would lead her in a different direction, her pulse began to race. She tried to read his expression to see if he was serious, but all she saw was sincerity. Finally finding her voice, Zuri swallowed. She muttered, I don't know what to say," a smile piercing the astonishment. Elon gave a quiet laugh. "Just say yes, and we'll figure out the rest later." She nodded without thinking. She managed to say, yes, I'd love to," with a voice full of passion. Some of the regulars seemed guilty, while others just stared in startled silence as they exchanged glances. As Zuri gave Elon the card machine to complete the payment, she couldn't help but smile. She recognized this was no typical transaction, but he handed her a receipt after entering his PIN. Elon gave her one last nod as he stood up to go. "I'll see you shortly, Zuri. My group will get in contact." After leaving Sweet Maple's cafe with a very appreciative waitress and a startled hush, he left. Zuri stood there, her heart racing, knowing that by standing up for someone she trusted, she had not only protected him, but also created a chance that might change her life. Why, in your opinion, did Zuri risk losing her job to protect Elon Musk in the cafe? Did she act just out of admiration, in your opinion, or was there more going on? Please share your ideas by leaving a comment below. We appreciate your time and hope to see you in the next video.